Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 3 of Jupiter's Legacy. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, what I thought was kind of interesting is we got kind of a better understanding of George's circumstances. Obviously, everyone in the world is kind of suffering at this time, but it seems like, all things working out for him. He literally has 99 different eggs boiled at different temperatures, and it's like, let's try out this type. Obviously, Jane and Walt show up because they want him to talk to Sheldon, because for them, it's like, he's unwell, and obviously it's interesting and kind of very sad when we look at George's character, because he has a very, happy disposition. He kind of feels like, I'm on top of the world, everything's okay. But it turns out that's a front, because he's dealing with a lot. Like, the fact of the matter is, when he actually talks to Sheldon and everything, the conversation comes up about, it's like, obviously, his dad killed himself in front of him, and it's like, Sheldon's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, why did he do that? Why did he do that in front of me? Also, just why he did it in general. But, it's also like, Sheldon brings it up about George's parents. It's like, you've never said 2 words about your parents. And for him, it's like, when they died, it's like, well, they died. Life happens. He's basically saying life happens and then it stops. It's his way to basically tries to keep this happy disposition of chin up and just kind of move forward. Don't let those feelings kind of bog you down. It is just kind of burying under this facade of I try to he tries to be witty and just try and be charming and just everything's okay, to kind of hide the fact is that it's just everything's falling apart around him. Even to the point later on, Walt calls him out because he's like, I heard about Wingate. You're just as bad off as a situation as the rest of us. But obviously later on he runs into the twins that, the whole boat situation we heard about, them burning down the boat and everything. Well, he meets up with one of them, and it's glad to see that you're okay, because there are a lot of people who still manage to find. It's we had to sell off one estate. He's like, what's one more or less, right? But the fact is, he's still keeping up the appearance of the high life society, because I think for George, this is kind of all he had. Because he lost his parents at a young age. For him, he's like, I look at you, Sheldon, I look at you and Walt, and the fact of the matter, it makes me wish I could just have my parents around in my life just a little bit longer. To be fair, Sheldon kind of passes out during that part of the conversation, so we don't know how much of that he actually heard. He heard some of it and kind of took the bad advice and kind of kept running with it. But first and foremost, I think it is the thing that George he's trying to fill a hole in his life, and this life is kind of all he has, and without that, it's just he's back to having that empty hole in him. It's it was his way to, like I said, keep himself distracted, paint the skies with sunshine, essentially. It's if you can fake it, then maybe you can make it. If you keep up the pretense of everything's okay, try to keep this happy disposition, then maybe, just maybe, you can convince and lie to yourself long enough that everything is okay, that you're okay. Which I think is kind of interesting, because Sheldon is visibly falling apart, whereas you have George kind of keeping up this appearance everything is okay, he isn't falling apart on the inside to a certain extent. Different circumstances, but at the same time, all things aren't peachy and cheery for George either. But Sheldon is seeing his dad, and I thought it was so interesting because, obviously it seemed at first it seemed like your dad was helpful to you, but now it just seems like he's driving him insane, because I guess Sheldon isn't really listening. He's trying to draw all these symbols and stuff like that, but his dad's haunting him. It's no. George isn't really here for you. He's here like everyone else, just here to watch the spectacles. Why is he so negative? And it's look at this handsome young man. It's I don't get why he's rubbing his face in it. I don't know. It seemed like he was kind of the angel on your shoulder, at least last episode, he's trying to help you get to this island where we know eventually you get your powers. But then, we have George, but then we have him in this episode. We have Chester in this episode being the devil on his shoulder, and it's I don't get why that shift back and forth like that. The sad thing is, even later on, Sheldon's honestly, I was almost contemplating whether I'd find my own roof to jump off, and George is don't say that. He's just don't tell Jane or Walt. It's I don't want them, if they heard me, they'd Walt would have me kind of locked up before you'd even have time to take off your tie. It's and George is I'd never tell them, but George became obsessed when he saw the symbols. I wonder what it is, because Walt says it later on. It's no. The universe revolves around you. Everything's about you. Because he's no, I'm here for Sheldon. It's no, you're not. You're here. And so maybe it's because he saw something in those patterns that maybe he thought, this is a great mystery. Maybe in his own mind, George needed something to distract himself from his own life. That maybe he took upon this great mystery. because maybe he thinks like, oh, maybe there's some adventure, maybe there's some real happiness, or maybe there's something at the end of all of this. Because for him, it's like, it doesn't seem like just random doodles. It seemed like there was something deeper there. And just when Sheldon had kind of moved on, it's like, life happens, kind of just, and then it ends. It's like that kept repeating in his head over and over again. And George kind of looks solemn because it's like, my advice is not to be followed. It's like, for him, it's like, that's a terrible way to live your life. It's like telling someone, just swallow it and keep it buried. Once again, as a person who buries a lot of stuff, who, keeps a lot of stuff bottled up, like, obviously, I can recognize, like, that's the shittiest advice you can give anyone. Obviously, George wasn't wanting him to do that, but it's just, like, that's how he lives his life, but because he lives with it, he knows that's not a good solution. It's a Band-Aid for a much deeper issue, and that Band-Aid in itself can cause some infection that grows and grows and makes things worse. I think George kind of has that perspective on things, but he tried to tell Sheldon, it's like, oh, you burned the rest of those? He's like, I think there might be something to this. Like, see? Because Sheldon's like, doesn't that look like a windmill? And it's like, yeah. He's like, I don't think this is just some random, like, stuff or anything. He's like, I think these are memories. Somewhere your dad took you before. But he's like, no, I've never been here before. And he's trying to tell him, like, there's more to it. And so when it happens, like, before Sheldon could burn them, like, it kicks in again. His nose starts bleeding, kind of has a seizure. So, like I said, what this is, I don't think that's his dad. Like I said, whatever, maybe this thing or someone is like manifesting at his dad, just kind of trying to push him in the right direction, be like, oh, this wasn't enough to motivate you, so I'm going to be an asshole to you to kind of motivate you. I don't know. But Sheldon ultimately ends up running off. Obviously, Walt Walt in particular is upset because it's like, now, because of you, like, because he was doing better, and then you had to send him off the deep end. You basically had to add fire, and now the house burnt down. So it's because of you that this happened. So now everyone's going to know that my brother's unwell. I think in this time, obviously, like, the conversation about mental health isn't what it is today. So it's like, oh, finding out he's crazy. It's like, oh, whisper, whisper, whisper. Oh, he's crazy. Oh, like that. Whether it's because of his father's suicide or whatever, just went on like, oh, like, he snapped or whatever. That's all the conversation's going to be. So, but, George was telling Jane, it's like, I'm sorry, but it's like, I'd never do anything to hurt him. He's my best friend. It's like, yes, but he isn't here, is he? And Jane walks away, which also begs the question, obviously we know Grace and that's kind of a big conversation too. It's like, well, we know Grace and Sheldon get together, so it's like, why isn't Jane necessarily in the picture? Maybe things shifted. I don't know whether it's like, maybe it's a thing of like Grace and Sheldon got together, and maybe like eventually maybe George and I'm about to say George and maybe Jane, but I don't know, because it seemed like, I don't know if there's necessarily anything there between them, but we'll wait and see. I don't think so, but there's always a possibility. So I like how that ultimately ends up being interwoven into the other story, because at first I was thinking like, oh, these seem like they're two separate things, and it seems like they heavily influence each other, because on the other side of things, present day, we meet Hutch, who's a bit of a criminal. He's got his own crew. He's supposed to be handling a job solo, because he works for someone called the Big Man, who needs him to like get some like device, and he wants to handle the job. And we learned that he has this special device, which is basically a teleportation device. He basically says a name and it teleports him there. So he goes to deal with the job. He's like, okay, the van, but there's someone waiting for him on the inside. Bullets go fired, and he's like, safe. It seems like he could be both very specific and as vague as possible. I wonder, does it technically have any preset? Well, it seems like it might have at the very least one preset. Home being like, oh, once he says that, it like comes back to him. We'll get to that later, which I thought was kind of interesting. But it also turns out it seems like Hutch doesn't have any powers. Really quickly, and this is going to be something like by the time I'm done with the season, I'll probably like have it figured out by myself. But like currently where I am, having watched episode 3, my understanding in episode 1 was like George is dead because Skyfox betrayed him. I don't think Skyfox and George are the same person, right? I don't know why this episode made me kind of get confused about it. It's like, but those are two separate people. He's not, his codename isn't Skyfox, right? Because at this episode, it's like, oh, like it's a the 40-year anniversary of Skyfox leaving the Union. Which is kind of interesting if they, because they were saying like, yeah, Skyfox is a terrorist and stuff like that. Like I said, I don't think that was George. I like I said, I had it clear in my head in the first episode, but now I think I'm getting confused. But I'm pretty sure, yeah, they're separate people. That's not like George's codename. At least I don't think it was. Regardless, like I said, because the way I'm recording is like, because I'm watching these one episode at a time, I'm going to have it clearer when these eventually come out, because the other episodes are going to clarify it. But like right now in the moment of me recording episode 3, that kind of confused me for a second. Regardless, the job didn't go well because Utopian showed up and it's like, yeah, gunfire everywhere and the thing he's supposed to be getting got destroyed. Cool. So he goes back and, he's got some business where it's like he owes someone else money and it's like, well, he's trying to buy something, but it's like, instead of having a week, he only has 2 days to get the money necessary to do it. And also, what was that dude's name? Was it Lioness and the other dude show up? I think it was Lucy and Lioness. And so they work for the big man, and obviously, he uses the device big man and ends up teleporting it. Because obviously the conversation was immediately after the job went sideways. It's like, damn, okay, the big man's going to come after us. We might as well all run. That's still also another question, too, because, supervillains and other people out there have powers. We know the Union League, their kids having powers, it makes sense. But it's like, where did everyone else get powers? Maybe maybe it's other... because that's always an interesting thing, because Invincible doesn't really answer the question of how a lot of people got their powers in that world. We got answers to why there's superheroes and the boys, but in this universe, in Invincible, that was something they haven't covered yet. I don't know if that's something that will get covered in the future, because maybe it's something the comic eventually covered, but it's just kind of this is the state of the world. So I'm curious, based on the trailer, we haven't gotten their storyline wise, but we know where the Union got their power. So it's because some of the supervillains, it's some of that's tech related, but there's other people just straight up power. So it makes you wonder, were they experiments too? And is it the Union? Are they the only ones that actually have full blown power? And is everyone else just more so experimentation, science fictional stuff going wrong type of thing? Because Hutch's 3 buddies, they all have powers. So that's why I was curious about it. But going to meet the big man, and obviously he's giving Hutch one more chance. It's do this job for me, steal something from these two brothers for me, and I will we'll call it a push. I guess we'll push back the execution date for you and your friends, because it's your lives are all forfeit if you fail me. So this is your one shot. Job has to be tonight. He brings it up to his friends, and it's initially home dude with the ice powers was reluctant. He's no, I'm gonna get out of town. But he's dude, big man is gonna find you. No matter where you run, there's no escaping him. You're as good as dead. And it's I'll take my chances. He's I'm gonna go to Antarctica. My van would take me everywhere. And it's Hutch is dude, the others, they said we need you. And they're what? He's yeah, they said we need you. It's even though he's lying out his teeth, because it's they said, it's almost we don't care if you bring him, we need his van. And it's don't worry, we got this. Everything's going to be okay. Hard cut to, they zapped me, because that was also his reason for not getting involved. It's you heard what they did to Stewart. It's yeah, I heard. They zapped his dick off. They zapped it clean off. And it's well, yeah, but I mean, come on, Stewart's an asshole. And then home dude, Jack is his name. He's we're all assholes, mate. So it's at the very least, yeah, they zapped you, but at the very least, you're not, they didn't zap off your dick. One of the others seems she has electricity too, so she kind of uses the kind of cauterize the wound. So they're running for their lives and everything as those two are after them, chasing after them on foot. One of them's kind of got an energy ball type of attack. But it also seemed the van is also souped up, because it's all right, do this, hit the lighter 3 times, and the van phases through the wall, and it's yeah, oh my god, yay, we worked it. It's yeah, I told you we needed the van. He's wait, what? You lying mother... And it's oh, don't worry about it, it's all fine, we're home free. And lo and behold, who they run into? None other than Chloe, because I like that she's just standing there, and even she's damn it, she's so inconvenienced, because she's probably shit, I hurt somebody, this is bad, damn it, this is bad. And then immediately when one of, the moment, there was, Jack came out, he was shit, it's Utopian's daughter, and he attacks her. Sad thing is, she wants nothing to do with the superhero stuff. If you had not attacked her, you wouldn't have got mixed up in this shit. It's just because you attacked her, you set everything in motion. It's so one of the others, it seems she's kind of got this sonic wave of she just is able to kind of keep her at bay, but Chloe's pushing through, because it's almost you started some shit, you want some, you can get some. It's she wasn't. But it's because they have it in their head, oh, that's Utopian's daughter. The fact of the matter is they think she's a hero. It's once again, she wants nothing to do with the hero business. She ain't gallivanting around as a hero. If you ran into her brother, be a different conversation, but it's her. So it's you kind of screwed yourself over on that front. So as they're doing their thing. The other, like, I wonder how you would describe her power, because it almost seemed like she basically jumped up, turned herself into electricity, because it was almost like, it kind of reminded me of, like, Barry running through, like, the Speed Force. It kind of reminded me of that, like, obviously different colors, but I was wondering, does she, like, turn herself into energy, or does she kind of, like, zap herself in a way that is, like, it seems like she does that to build up energy, so, like, I don't know whether, like, she kind of, like, like, it was, I didn't know how to necessarily describe that, but it seemed like she did it to kind of build up the electricity, and then she punches Chloe, and it did nothing. Chloe uppercuts her into the sky. Her significant other, like, chases after her. You hope she was able to get to her before she came crashing down, because that would have killed her. So, home dude takes off. Only one left is Hutch. And it's like, she's like, do you want some too? And, like, he ends up dropping what was in the bag, and it ends up being like a bag. And the police are coming, and Chloe's like, damn it. I wonder, did she get caught up in the scene? That probably turns into a whole family thing. Or maybe she leaves this scene because it's like, damn it, last thing I need is the publicity from this, because all I'm going to do is get more guff and shit from mom and dad. So, for her, it's just going to, like, reinforce stuff they already feel about her. So, it's like, So, we have no idea what that bag is. But what was it? Linus and Lucy was like, yo, big man calling for you, and it's like, can we just do this tomorrow? It's like, nope. He's like, all right, and then he's like talking shit about his friends, and he's like, you shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't have said what you said about my friends. And he's reaching for the device, and home dude takes it because he's got, like, tentacle powers or something. He's like, okay, got your thing now. What are you going to do? Because he has no powers. But then, like, he was like, shark infested waters, and it's like, he's like, yeah, so home, and he brings it back, and it's like, yeah, there's a misconception that only the person who's touching it can make it do whatever it wants to. It's like, no, it only listens to me, and was like, wow, so that's a powerful-ass weapon. So it's like, you could throw it to someone, have them grab it, and could be like, core of the planet, and then teleport them there, and then call it back. It's, like, interesting. It's like, that was fascinating. Considering his dad, which we'll get to in a second, I wonder, is that, like, something that was passed down? I wonder, is that also kind of insinuating, like, his dad, maybe he doesn't necessarily have, like, powers. It might be a thing of, like, it might be kind of an intelligence thing. So, like, he's super smart, like, when it comes to certain tech, and maybe that's what that is. Like, he built that, or maybe that's a family heirloom type of thing. I don't know. And he's talking to Linus. He's like, so if you were in my position, what would you do? And he's like, we call it bygones. And then he holds it up, and he's like, big guy's heart, counts down a couple, waits for it, home, it comes back drenched in blood. And for him, it's like, you and your buddy Linus and your buddy Lucy, you kind of forced me to break a code of mine, because he kept up the code of, like, not killing anyone, because even though they were committing crime, doing criminal stuff, it's like, that would be the number one thing, no one gets hurt, no one gets killed. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's like the world is changing, kind of got to change with it. So, Linus, you're going to hook me up with one more deal before you go, call it in advance. And so, I guess Linus is going to be running that operation now, or whether that's supposed to imply, like, Hutch is taking over, the big guy's operations, whatever the case may be. Because I was thinking he was kind of implying, like, Linus would be, like, his right-hand man type of situation. I thought that's where we're going. I'm not sure if that is. We'll kind of find out in the future whether that's the case or not. But he ends up buying a device, and it's like, yeah, this thing could power a small city for, like, over a year, or it could punch a hole in the most powerful being on this planet. And it's like, oh, I'll keep that in mind. It's like, does it work? Probably. And so we see him kind of putting it together at the end of the episode, and he's like, almost there, Dad. And we see a picture of George, so it's like George is his dad. So I'm assuming he's trying to get revenge on Skyfox, because maybe that's what that is, or because part of me was also wondering, it's like, not unless we find out he's trying to put a hole in because that's why I'm, like, confused on what, that's what kind of confused me, because I was wondering, like, if he was actually Skyfox, maybe it was kind of insinuating, like, because I was wondering, like, could the person he's actually going after be, could actually be, God, I'm blanking on it, Sheldon. That's who I was wondering if that's who he's going after, because of that line of, it can punch a hole in the most powerful person in being in the planet. So either that, so that makes me think, like, oh, like, he had something to do with whatever happened to George, and, like, maybe Hutch knows the truth. Because the interesting thing is, the moment Chloe saw him, she's like, I know you, and then he immediately bailed. Because I thought he was going to, like, be able to solidify the situation before shit even got heated the way he did. I thought he was going to pop out the van like, oh, well, stop. hey, Chloe, and then kind of like appease the situation, didn't come down to that. Because I guess it's like he didn't want her to know who he was. Like, it's probably from years ago when they were little. I don't know. He wants revenge against someone, and the most powerful being that we're aware of, not less it is like other circumstances on. It's like, yeah, like Skyfox like betrayed them or whatever, but it's like not less it's kind of insinuating like once again, it's my own fault for getting that confused in my head whether or not Skyfox and George are the same person. Like I say, I'm sure they set it up in episode 1 and saying that it was 2 different people, that George is dead because Skyfox betrayed them, I think. So it could be a thing of like, once again, he's not killing anyone, but it's like the person who actually did kill his dad is probably locked up, whether it's Skyfox or whether it was someone else. He didn't kill before, but now he's kind of crossing the line of being like you said, like being like, at the end of the day, I got to change with the world. So no, since I'm already killing, might as well get full blown revenge for his dad. So I'm really interested to kind of see where that story takes us, especially like maybe Chloe eventually remembers who he is, and kind of brings up to her dad, which is interesting considering everything. I mean, that's why he made. For one, he didn't want to be found in the area when Utopia showed up in the at the beginning of the episode. But it's also probably like, want to make doubly sure you don't see me because you would immediately recognize me. So I'm really interested to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.